The more people we have.
Yeah.
That you're here. We have the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, and it is 1:30 p.m. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Present.
Commissioner Peters,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Present.
Mayor Moore,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Rubin.
Present.
We could all rise for the pledge. Anyone have any changes for the agenda? No? Seeing no changes?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next up, presentations and proclamations, swearing in of fire rescue personnel.
I think so. Yeah.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. You'll state your name. I, a citizen of the state of Florida and of the United States of America, and being employed by the town of Highland Beach as a recipient of public funds as such employee or officer, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Florida and the Code of Ordinances of the town of Highland Beach, Florida. Congratulations.
Welcome, everyone. We're really happy that you've joined Highland Beach, and we're really excited for you to be here with our kickoff of our fire rescue department. So thank you very much, each and every one of you. Moving on, resolution number 2024-007, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, approving a declaration of unity of title submitted by Highland Beach Holdings for the property location north of the intersection of Grand Court and State Road A1A, specifically parcel control numbers as listed here and providing an effective date.
Good afternoon, for the record, Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. Okay, as indicated, the item before you is a request for a unity of title. On page 5 of your packets, I provided you the parcel control numbers. These are the two parcels that are located at the intersection of Grand Court and State Road A1A. They do not currently have a property address per the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser, so we've gone ahead and documented these parcels via the parcel control number. I also indicate in your agenda memorandum that per section 30-68Q3 of the Town Code, all unities of title shall be reviewed by the town attorney, which the application has, and approved by the Town Commission. Now, I also indicate that, well, I already mentioned, they don't currently have the address, but if the unity is approved by the commission, the building department will provide an address. And of course, we will be reaching out to the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser to advise them of the address. Both of these parcels are currently vacant. I provided some aerials for you on page 15 and 16. If you look on page 15, that particular aerial is looking westward. And then on page 16, that aerial is looking northward. So the current zoning for the property is multifamily low density. That's the acronym RML. And the corresponding future land use designation is a multifamily low density. And on the top of page 6, I provided you a table which shows the zoning district and the corresponding future land use designations for properties that are adjacent to these two parcels. Now, according to the applicant's survey, which is also attached in your packet, that is on page 14, the combined parcels will be 26,117 square feet. Now, I also indicate that the development of the parcels is subject to the 1995 settlement agreement. I provided the resolution number for that, but I wanted just to advise the commission that the underlining zoning, right, which is that residential multifamily low density, would allow 3 units. So the RML zoning district has a maximum density of 6 units per dwelling acre, per 6 units per dwelling per acre, excuse me. So when you do the density calculation, I provided it's 3.59 units. So we don't have a rounding up provision in our code, so it would be 3 units. Now that's aside from their settlement agreement, which allows for more density. So I'm glad to provide any or answer any questions you may have. Ms. Milani is here and her authorized agent for this request is also here as well. Go ahead.
Ingrid, this is a common thing just to, I mean, an attorney approve this and everything, our attorney and the planning board, this is, I mean.
This doesn't go before the planning board. It
No, it
is
doesn't.
per code, it's to the commission. Since I've been here, which is 4 years, a little over 4 years, I think we've had maybe 3 unity of title requests. I mean, they do come up, every
Okay.
now and then, but yeah,
All right.
unifying the properties.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't approve this? Is there any disadvantage?
Again, we don't have any provisions in the code for me to guide me. The code just says unity of titles, you have to go before the commission. There's no regulations, there's no provisions, there's no criteria. So again, I'm letting you know that if for some reason their settlement agreement expires, I'm letting you know what the underlying zoning allows in terms of dwelling units as far as density. Obviously, if it does expire, they'll have to come before the planning board to get a site plan approval. Obviously, if they go by the settlement agreement, there's the parameters there where they can just go through a building permit process. But
Just as a point of curiosity, why wasn't this done years ago?
that is a good question, possibly for the property
Because
owner.
the
Yeah.
rectangular piece that runs along the side isn't buildable. It's not a
Yeah.
buildable width. It's only 62 feet wide.
From my experience, I've seen parcels like this in other municipalities. Until you really start getting the development, then people start, unifying properties. But if they just lay vacant, like this one has, people just kind of wait. But again, maybe that would be a more appropriate question for the property owner.
Just
Yeah.
curious.
I have no issue with this. I don't know if there's any other discussion.
Well, I have a question. Is this in any way in conflict with the resolution and the settlement agreement?
I didn't review this request against the settlement agreement. In the settlement agreement, I've discussed this with Mr. Rubin. There's no reference to getting a unity of title. Again, the item before you is a unity of title, and maybe Mr. Rubin can chime
Well,
in, but
in the settlement agreement, the development parameters for those lots are together anyway. It's always assumed they're going to be developed as one project.
Okay.
So that's why we didn't see any issue.
right.
And just for clarification, so under the terms of the settlement agreement and assuming that the requisite building or preliminary obligations are met and it applies, is that the 3 units become 6 units?
It's 9
It's
units.
9.
9 units.
Right, it's 9 units per their settlement agreement.
Okay, thank you.
And as Mr. Rubin indicated, it's 1, right, in the settlement agreement, it's
Mhm.
combined units, yeah,
Mhm.
combined parcels.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Open it up for public comments. Yeah, any public comments on this item? Seeing no public comments, we could have a motion.
I move we accept resolution number 2024-007.
I second it.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to the Water Conservation Month proclamation. And
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the family.
Yeah.
You don't have.
just read it. Okay, yeah. So this is just a water conservation proclamation. And the purpose is to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. We can all make a difference when it comes to conserving water, and we can all help by saving water and thus promoting a healthy economy and community. So now therefore, I, Natasha Moore, Mayor of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, on behalf of the Town Commission, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Water Conservation Month. Moving on, public comments, any general public comments? Moving on to the consent agenda. Any concerns about the consent agenda? If no concerns, if we could have a motion?
I move that we approve item A in the consent agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to unfinished business, discussion of the proposed amendment concepts pertaining to the accessory marine facility and seawall regulations of the town code.
So as Ingrid steps up, I'll jump in a little bit here. We've been going around for a while on this, spent a lot of time and effort. Thank you, Ingrid, for shepherding this process through for us. Jeff, thank you as well. So basically what today comes down to is which parts as presented or modified would you like us to commence moving forward with the development of ordinance language. Right now, these are all concepts. And Ingrid's been pretty good about keeping us on that point that we are discussing concepts today. And that's what we have. So when you're ready, if you like a concept, then we take it, work with Len and put it into an ordinance format, which then we would look at the final details of how that looks within the structure of our codes today. So again, we spent a lot of time. Thank you for everyone going out there, taking a look at it. Dr. Johansson called me today, said he's recovering, he can't make it, but he's, watching as well as many in the community. So I guess today is where we start, getting a little guidance and direction of like it, don't like it, kind of discussion. Do you want us to move forward with modification, move forward, or just not do it? So,
I guess I was thinking we could go through each one and maybe
Sure.
each of us could say whether or not they're in favor of it or not. And I guess also just to say, if we decide not to move forward with something, it just means we retain the current ordinance. It's not like
Right, right,
we just retain what the current situation is.
right,
So
with the current
a
code.
no action is not so bad. For
Right,
depending on your opinion of the item.
I believe I discussed with all the commissioners who went on the boat, that right now we have provisions in our code about marine expert, right? That we're able to bring in a marine expert if there's I don't want to say an odd situation, but maybe a situation we don't see every day with all the different boat lift applications we have coming in, or dock application or seawall. Something's a little bit out of the ordinary, then we bring in a marine expert. So yeah, we always have that ability to get professional expertise, a written report from the marine expert on a particular project.
So if everyone is okay with it, we'll just go one by one and then just if you could kind of say what your thought is. So the first item is the maximum height, which is base flood elevation plus 7 feet. Now, if you could just expand on what that is the lift itself, right?
Yeah, this is a maximum height for accessory marine facilities, which is, in so many words, the boat lift, right? The lift itself, the structure. So the initial concept, remember, the initial concept were the concepts that were submitted or introduced by Greg Bobby, the previous vice mayor. So that was his formula, if you wish, which was base flood elevation plus 7 feet. The planning board's recommendation was base flood elevation plus 8 feet. So they wanted to go a foot above. We actually had the marine expert, which is Dr. Michael Jenkins, come to one of the planning board meetings, because even the board wanted a little bit more expertise on this particular request. And so the recommendation from the marine expert was to do the plus 8 feet from the base flood elevation. So the base flood elevation, again, that is deemed or determined by FEMA. And it's the anticipated height of floodwaters during a 100-year flood. So the higher you are above base of flood elevation, the less likelihood of flooding, right? And then your flood rates are less, right? So there's every property has a base flood elevation. Again, on the west side of A1A, the general base flood elevation is currently 6 feet. NAVD, it is pending 7. So that's the situation we have right now.
So does anyone want to go first? I mean, I don't mind going first.
Does this include pilings?
This is the structure. Well, the lift piles, yes, that's part of the structure of the boat lift.
So,
Right, it's not about the boat itself, it's about the structure, the boat lift.
Right.
Right,
so that the piles
right,
can't be higher than
Right.
8 feet above.
right.
Thank you.
And the top of the piles would be the top, right? Because any other part of the lift, nothing would really,
Right, so you
Okay.
have the piles and then usually on one of the piles, you have the mechanical equipment, right? So we have people right now, when we have applications come in, I do have them measured to the top of the lift, which is the mechanical equipment. Again, we don't have, the code doesn't define where is the top of the lift. But if you have the mechanical equipment, that should be the top of the lift. It's part of the lift. Again, the code doesn't really address that, but I have had applicants call out that height from the top of the lift, meaning the top of the mechanical equipment, just to be sure that they're in compliance with the definition of boat lift as it reads now, that the lift cannot be higher than the superstructure of the boat when living. So the lift, the top of the mechanical equipment is what what has been our protocol. Again, we don't have anything in the code, but
Perhaps we should go back in a later date and fix that.
yeah. We could define what the top of the lift is, right?
How does this impact the homeowners that have lifts now? If it is, if it varies, if we would pass this,
Right.
would this be prospective only?
Well, again, I think like many parcels and many accessory marine facilities that we currently have in the town, I believe a lot of you saw when we went out on the boat. We have some lifts right now that are not conforming, right? We have lifts, if you remember in the Bird Beach area, some lifts are in the 25-foot side setback. I know I called it out when I went on a lot of the tours. So those are just non-conforming, right? And we don't bother with anyone. But if they want to come in, let's say their lift is deteriorating and the pilings are falling into the water and they have to come in and install. That's the key word, the way the code addresses boat lifts and other accessory marine facilities, even seawalls. It's the installation. So if you want to install a new lift and your current lift is within the site setback, if there's a site setback requirement, you're going to have to put your new one in based on current code. So yeah, anyone now would just be non-conforming. And then once they need to, whether it's replace the seawall, changing the pilings or dock piles, once they have to install new, then they would have to comply with any new provision that the commission wants to move forward with.
What about repair?
Repair, it really depends. We've had some people who want to repair their dock and they just want to do the decking. They're not touching the dock piles. They're just replacing some of the decking. And we've had this scenario before with Jeff and I, Jeffrey, Mr. Building Official. That can be done through a building permit because you're not installing a new dock. You're just taking the decking and you're changing it. So that's a building permit. That could be done through a building permit. It's more about the installation of the dock, which is really you're installing it, you're putting dock piles, you're putting new dock piles in. That technically, again, staff, we've come up with an interpretation that is obviously installation, of a new dock.
If I could expand,
Yes, yeah.
generally kind of like a rule of thumb, I don't know that we have it specifically defined, but it's usually 50% or value or structure. Once you get beyond that, so 70% needs to be replaced. That's installation and you have to come into conformance. So you can only go so far with that scope of a repair before it becomes a reconstruction or a new installation, and then you have to come into compliance.
So with that number 60% or 70?
Usually it's 50.
Fifty?
Zoning is a very common measure.
Mhm.
I mean, if we ever got pressed on that, they could get an interpretation if we wanted, but
I don't know. Does our codes call out the 50? A lot of codes do.
I don't
have
think
the-
so.
I
Maybe.
don't think it
maybe the
does, but
Building, no.
no.
I could,
But
I could do a
essentially
quick
be
check.
anytime it was replaced or moved, it would have to comply with the new. If they're just replacing, as Ingrid said, just doing some minor maintenance, then that's fine.
I think it maybe, Marshall, what you were referencing was maybe in the non-conforming section, if there's a destroyed, right, in some way, I think there's a reference to 50% possibly. I'd have to look it up, but yeah.
Because I know occasionally the pilings, one or two will have to be replaced at a slip for somebody backed into it or whatever the reason is. And I don't think they should have to redo everything because they're replacing two pilings. That's not truly creating a new dock.
correct. You're right. It just depends if the whole thing is two piles and you replace two piles, that's most of it. So I mean,
Right.
if you got 8 piles and you remove 2, that's not a big deal, but if it's, that's why they kind of use that scope of 50% of value, or I prefer the 50% of structure. It's easier to measure and you don't get into the valued piece like you would on a home or a structure of that nature. So usually we look at the actual component, size, scope of the structure.
Then perhaps we should go back at a later date and fix that too, so that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, if it's not there,
So
we
that
should-
it's
yep.
Yeah. we
apples
could
to
address that as
apples.
part of this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, what we're talking about is whether or not we want this item, like we want Ingrid to start developing
Correct.
language going forward. So I think we can talk about what triggers what and, you know, and it also depends on, the discussion doesn't sound to me that it's all about the maximum height. It sounds like some discussions about setbacks and all that. We don't even know if we even want setbacks to
Right.
be in there. So I think if we could just focus on, whether or not we want ordinance language that has to do with maximum height and what that would be, that the +7 or +8. I would recommend we move forward with the +8 and we can discuss the specifics as we go through the different readings of the ordinance because she'll come up with a draft, right? I mean, there's several like readings that we go through, so there's
At least
plenty of
two.
opportunity to
least
talk about.
There's at least 2 readings.
Right.
We tend to do more.
Right.
You
Uh,
can
but,
workshop.
Also, anything that's measured or dimensional can always apply for a variance. So no matter what detail we get into, because most of us in the context of review will try to think of unusual situations that we want to make sure we account for. But there is the variance process that allows you to, for some odd reason, if something that they needed 8.5 feet, there's the ability to go and get a variance because of that unique nature or hardship that's presented by that one-off case. They have that opportunity. And that would go for the setbacks too, that if there's some unusual situation, the way the land is, the structure, the pile depth, something like that, that needs to be slightly modified, there is the variance process.
But do they have to show hardship?
Yes.
Practical difficulty, correct. And again, it could be, I have this really weird lot and I only have 8 feet of frontage and you try to measure setbacks or you can only get certain height of because of the distance or a seagrass survey or something may prohibit or limit, those start to present practical difficulties.
Currently, can you tell us under what circumstances that the committee calls in the marine experts?
Well, we had one, actually, we have one coming up at the planning board on April 11th. So this is for a boat lift on the canal in Boca Highlands on the northernmost canal at the end. And there was a boat lift there previously, so they're putting in a new boat lift. I couldn't necessarily find a permit for the previous one. That doesn't necessarily mean they didn't get a permit, but the records are a little bit difficult sometimes with previous permits. It's tight in there. So when you put in a boat lift, our code requires that you can't impact, that's probably not the correct word, but you can't impact the navigability of the waterway. So I'm not a marine expert. We don't have anyone on staff that is, so I'm not going to make the determination whether that lift, because it is a tight fit in there. The code requires 80 feet width of canal. There's about 85 feet. I'm not going to be able to indicate whether it's impacting navigability of the waterway. So we brought in the marine expert and there's a report that indicates that it's, it's sort of a status quo situation. It's going to work. It's been working. So that's an example of bringing in the marine expert. We had, last year, we had a platform lift over in Bellito. And it was right on one of the corner parcels where it enters into the lake. And so it was like right at the edge there. So again, I wasn't sure if it was going to impact the navigability of the waterway. It was a little bit of a narrower area. Again, we brought in the marine expert for that. The marine expert provided a report indicating it would not impact the navigability of the waterway. That report was presented to the planning board. They were able to make their decision and so forth.
So now it's very fluid. If we start being very precise in our codes the certainty, would that necessarily, even so far as the setbacks, would that then necessarily limit the ability of calling in the marine expert?
I think it depends how you word the ordinance. I mean, we could still keep the provision about a marine expert, even though you may make some new dimensional requirements, we could still add that we can at any time bring in a marine expert.
Yeah,
would think we could
and
add
we have a
language.
lot of anomalies in the town,
Yeah.
especially the one that Ingrid was just talking about over by Boca Highlands, that body of water. There's some tough situations
Yeah,
in
it's
there.
tight. Yeah.
So they're all a little different, but no, I think we could, while being more precise, it doesn't take away the ability to bring in the expert. And we'll word it that way if we have to.
I would like to see a visual of what the difference between 7 feet above and 8 feet above actually looks like. Because personally, at this point, I don't have any care about one way or the other. I wouldn't want it to be 10 or 12 feet above because that's,
Yeah, in the public input meetings that we had in December of 2022, I provided some examples of different lifts. I have the PowerPoint here. Let me see if I could share it with you. Pull some of those up. So it should come up in a minute. Okay. Bear with me, there's about 50 slides here. The whole kitchen sink is in here, so bear with me. Okay, so here are the examples that, again, I provided during the public input meetings. So the slide to your left. Find the little pointer here. Linelda, I'm sorry, you gave me the pointer, right? See it. Sure, if you handed it to me.
But with those heights, it's gonna be hard from what advantage point or viewing point are you going to review them? That's gonna be the challenge. If you're on an elevated deck,
Right,
second floor deck,
it's something.
8th floor deck,
right.
the
Gotcha.
7 to 8 feet will be quite difficult. And we're always gonna have a difference in height over time. Because as Jeff has educated us over the years, BFE changes over time.
Right.
Right.
Not fast enough, but it does change. It does change over time where we go from 6, then 7. You could imagine in 12 years, it'll go to 7.5 or 8. So it's constantly going to be depending on that base flood elevation, since we kind of tied it to that FEMA guidance that we'll have moving forward. But it will be quite challenging. But again, think of in your neighborhood, this is the Touche. I think they've sold the property, so he won't be mad at us talking about it. But the Touche property is at 12 feet.
Right.
It was vastly higher than anything else in the area, so that's what started to create that concern. I think with, as we were just talking about the marine expert, again, this is your first town planner, you would have probably have seen and avoided Touche with the staffing that we currently deploy, and I would imagine will be deployed in the future to catch, because the plans never showed the height, right? So that's the
Yeah.
rub. But yeah, you see the
Yeah.
9, 10, that's vastly different than 1 foot, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, but Touche example, I look directly down on that. And did make a difference to me because I have to go to the end of the balcony to look over to see it. But even though they said it was navigable across, when you look down, if you know anything about handling boats, it would be extremely difficult and you'd have to have absolute control over a boat going past to be able to do anything. And you get a feeling for that when you look down on it, as opposed to just shooting a beam and taking a measurement. Because it's not square. It goes in corners and it was funky. And I wasn't really thinking about looking down on it, because to be honest, looking down on it's not gonna make any difference. The difference would be if it's blocking someone's view unreasonably on a first level. And
Correct,
that's-
and you have that ability through the marine expert to say it is
Right.
an unnecessary obstruction or a significant enough obstruction that it takes that value of view shed, which is, view sheds are hard to measure, but.
Right.
Um,
And if I may add, when the applicant came in to go to 12 feet on those pilings, again, I had inherited that project, so I brought in the marine expert, and the marine expert report indicated that those were pretty high and needed more of a justification why the 12 feet. And then when they were denied, they came back with 7 feet. The marine expert looked at those plans, and then on the 7 feet, the marine expert felt that it was within standard practice. It would not impact the navigability. And so it's interesting how the report from the marine expert did change from 12 feet, which it was questionable, versus the 7 feet where it was
well,
deemed
on
acceptable.
with 7 feet, you're really blocking the view of somebody on the same level on a
Mhm.
first floor. Once you go up to 12, you're already into the second floor of the building.
Yeah.
So it's seeing a pretty boat or seeing the ugly bottom of a pretty boat,
Yeah.
which makes a difference.
But
And
again,
what's-
here's the detail. I believe this is what you were asking for, right? To show like, this is the top of the lift, again, the top of the mechanical equipment. And this is the superstructure of the boat when lifted at 9 feet, 7 inches. And this was a table that I had done a few years back. At that point, the highest we had was 7 feet, 7 inches. I haven't looked at it, since about 2 years, but I would say we haven't had many. I would say most of them are within that 7 feet, 7 inches. I don't believe we had any higher. But just to answer your question, give you a little bit of perspective of how that lift pile looks. Yeah.
And what's the no action? If we do
Um,
no action?
Yeah, the no action would be, again, if something comes in that's a bit out of the ordinary, some really high pilings that we typically don't see, that's when we would bring in the marine expert. Or, again, they're putting a boat lift that has, the boat lifts are by pounds, right, capacity. So if it's a very large boat lift and a tight area of the canal, and again, they have to show that they're not going to impact the navigability, then we'll bring in the marine expert. Again, they'll determine whether, a tight area of the canal versus a larger type capacity boat lift will impact the navigability, or again, impact the visual of the public or the adjacent neighbors. They'll make that call. They're the
So
experts.
it's
Yeah.
no action, 2 things. The height, you're gonna see this slight variability.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything, but it goes to the planning board. If you approve it, the idea is that if it's 8 or less, it goes directly to building permits. So the due process is removed from it. That's the no action, or the action is, those are the difference you're gonna see. If we don't do anything, just leave it the way it is. You'll see this, but they have to go to the planning board. If you change it, you'll see this and it doesn't have to go to the planning board. So it's,
I
But
think
it's
it
less than
still
8
does
feet.
have to go to planning.
we kept it in there.
We thought that it was still going to go to the
Yeah,
planning
that
board,
was-
but
that was
the
the
commission can
premise.
decide
Right, it
whether,
doesn't have to,
Go.
but
But
right,
if it's in the, right,
if the commission decides that if it's within this new regulation, if you want it to be administratively approved by staff and not go to the planning board, only the ones that may be higher or
Right.
that will be a variance, and that would be a Board of
Variance.
Adjustment and Appeals. But I mean, that would be something the commission,
but you're saying this variability, I mean, if we approve the 8 + 8 feet, which I'm in favor of, I mean, all these
all those.
would be
apply.
fine.
That
And
combines.
it still might have variability. It's just 8, it's just less than 8 feet.
I'll go out there. I'll do it, Ingrid. If we don't do anything, it'll be like now where we don't get complaints. We're not receiving any concerns from folks that they can't do what they want.
Okay,
There's,
so the
there's not, there's
recommendation,
not, we had the touche, sorry, process. Before we had a building official, before we had a planner, we had problems because no one was watching anything. So they were going wherever willy-nilly. Now, once we started following the code as written, we went to the planning board. You had a marine expert if it got kind of wily. And it got a thorough review, made sure the plans were complete. Trust me, everyone knows if they go to Ingrid, you gotta have complete plans. So a lot of those issues aren't really popping up and you're still getting variability the old way. You'll get variability the new way. There isn't much difference,
But-
to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
know I'm putting myself out there. There's probably people in the community go crazy right now. I just have to be honest. We're getting to the planning, I mean, outside of waiting for a planning board, but we're not taking that piece out. And the planning board's making really good decisions right now because they're getting a marine expert and complete plans. We didn't get those at the beginning. And originally we started with, put it in a box, it goes to the building department. It's kind of, remember that, it fits in the box, Jeff can issue a permit, but then we started finding all these odd properties. And then we were concerned due process and neighbors not knowing and they know now. And I don't, this or that. So we're back to almost to where we started, if you will. But we're maybe creating more boundaries. It's 8 feet is a max. So don't even think about asking for 9. Right now, I guess you could ask for 9, but by the time the marine expert looks at it, full set of plans, the planning board, bring it back down. So,
So you're saying that if we put in a maximum, now we don't have a maximum.
Mhm.
That the format could be the same.
it is the same.
They will not, they'll still have to go to planning. They will not directly go and get a permit.
Correct.
So right now, what is the, it's not written. So what is the acceptable number? Is it 7 feet before everyone gets out of shape?
Again, that there is no number, but
Oh.
again, if you look at that chart there, you'll see what has been coming into the town.
Okay.
We have boat lift height 6 feet on this chart, up to 7 feet, 7 inches. Again, this was done 2 years ago in preparation for the public input meetings in 2022. But again, I will say, I haven't really seen much variation. I haven't seen anything much higher that I can recall.
So if someone came in with 8.5 feet,
Right,
what would be the action today?
8.5 feet. Well, we obviously will look at the location, right? If it's in a really tight area, I don't know that we could, again, the height, 8 feet, it really depends. It's on a case by case basis.
Okay,
Again, if it's high and then in a really narrow area, if it's high and on the lake in Bellito,
Depends on the boat lift
Yeah.
type,
Yeah.
boat
But
size
also
carried, carrying
remember-
capacity, electrical connections, lighting systems.
yeah,
Every
Boats,
single one is so unique and different because
Yeah.
not everyone drives the same boat at the same property.
boats are built in cubes. So it's not just gonna go up and long, it's gonna go wide
Mhm.
too. So that all makes a difference. And the width sometimes is more important than the other two.
so let's look at what is the benefit of having a limit put in now, maximum height?
It would keep the arguments minimized with staff. So when they have a pre-construction meeting or a pre-design meeting, I'm getting 10 because I want 10, blah, blah, blah. We'll have a marine expert. Ingrid's like, you shouldn't, because these are our variables. If you say it's 8, you just say, well, it's 8, or you have to go see the zoning board and what's your practical difficulty. So it does, it simplifies things for staff, I would have to admit, when they have, folks that really want what they want. Highland Beach, we do tend to have that.
But it would not
But they could
limit,
go higher.
it would
if they
not
want, but-
limit bringing in, the planning board from bringing in.
No. Planning
Whatever
board at any point in
resources
time, even if
needed,
staff didn't bring a marine expert, planning board could make a motion and say, nope, we're not making this decision without
right,
a marine expert. Even if
Right.
we thought comfortable with it, they could say,
Right.
staff doesn't know what they're doing. We
Right.
want that marine
But-
expert to give us that
right.
advice. That's
And-
totally acceptable.
right, and continue the item until you get the report.
If we make a maximum of 8, nobody's gonna come in, or very few would come and ask for 10 or 12. So
Correct.
it limits those questions. And based on the numbers that Ingrid has, no one has even asked for 8. So if we go to 8, we're safe.
Now,
It's
again, these
not-
are on, based on approved, right?
Yes.
Because Touchette's not on here because it was not approved, so I didn't include it, but yeah.
But it would probably be pretty safe.
And then you're not faced with that, oh, well, when do you trigger getting a marine expert? You know, if someone comes in with 8.5, you know. I mean, I like going to 8. It's what the marine expert recommended. And if someone needs higher, they ask for a variance. And if we get a ton of variance requests, then we can revisit the 8. So, you know, I kind of like having, it's almost, well, and it's like a standard that's more than what most people, you know, more than most people have installed. So that's why I like it. I don't know, is there any public comment about the maximum? So we'll go through each component. So, and again, this is just to let Ingrid know to start writing an ordinance. We don't have to decide it today. We don't, you know, we can
Yeah.
continue these
Mhm.
discussions. It's really just about whether or not we want, we can still scrap the,
Mhm.
scrap the concept. You know, if she starts writing an you know, we don't want to make her do unnecessary work if we know we don't want to pursue it, but yeah, I think we should go ahead and let Ingrid, I think it's worthwhile for her to draft it. Personally, my 1/5 vote, my 1 out of 5 vote.
Yeah,
Okay, good, too.
yeah, I like the 8 feet. I think all the
Yeah.
municipalities around us are doing about the same, so. I think it's
Yeah,
a
I agree.
common
Let's,
denominator.
let's wrap.
So do you want a motion on each item, or can we just like tell you the consensus?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think consensus is
Okay.
fine, because we're talking about concepts still.
So I'd say move forward with the concept, writing the ordinance, and then of course we'll continue all these discussions. Okay, the next item, exempting the personal watercraft lifts from the requirement that in no case shall the lift be higher than the superstructure of the boat when lifted. Or just remove the requirement. And you showed us that like it
Have it
never,
right behind you.
yeah, it can never be that way. So.
Right, and I know when I went out on the marine boat with several of you, I pointed out the existing, jet ski lifts that we have, right? So here's a detail of an actual jet ski lift that came in about 4 years ago at 1004 Bel Air Drive. You can see here, the top of the lift is right here, which is at 6 feet. And the superstructure of the jet ski is at 3 feet 9 inches. So in this case, the lift is higher than the superstructure of the boat. That's not compliant with the definition of boat lift. But a lot of these jet ski lifts are low profile. It's really hard to make them work otherwise. So that's why that provision was initially proposed by Mr. Bobby. The code really doesn't deal with that scenario right now. It just says boat lifts. So a jet ski lift is, a jet ski is a boat. That's sort of how the concept came to be. Yeah.
I think that makes common sense. Because you don't want to change your pilings and your structure, because if you decide to get a boat instead of the jet ski, then you'd have to build the whole thing all over again. And that doesn't make any sense.
I agree with exempting these personal watercrafts.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes, I did
Yeah.
too.
okay, I think we have consensus on that one to go ahead and move forward with that. Next item, oh, any public comments on? No. Next item, maximum seawall cap width 3 feet. Maximum seawall cap plus dock width 8 feet. And the recommendation is, yeah, the maximum. Oh, so not to even mention the 3 feet, right? The recommendation is just
From the
maximum
planning
8
board,
feet.
that's correct.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
tell me again,
Yeah, so right
why
now-
remove, I think the 8 feet just makes it more flexible, right? If you want to cap a certain width, as long as everything's within the 8.
Yeah, I mean, typically what we see is, I think I have another, see if I have another. Yeah. You know, typically what we see coming into the town is seawalls are typically 3 feet.
Right.
Docks are typically 5 feet.
Right.
But there's been some that are a little bit different. Hold on, I think I have a slide on that.
So it just provides more flexibility.
have a lot of slides here.
So this was kind of, there was a property in question that, because of some of these limitations, just basically made a seawall cap go further out. So
Right.
he said, oh, no, that's not a dock, that's a seawall cap. It was
Right.
8, 9 feet, of
Right.
just seawall cap. So.
Right.
We're like, he's, whatever it is, just kind of limit what that is. Or
Eight,
max.
eight to be
Yeah,
8
yeah,
feet,
yeah.
and not differentiate what's.
You can't do 8-foot seawall cap and say, oh, now I get a 5-foot dock. So then you
right,
start
right.
really,
I think
but
that makes
again-
sense. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
that will
here's a
make sense.
detail of a typical type of seawall we have coming in. Again, there's always deviations, but again, the 3 feet wide. This one doesn't have the dock, but you typically have, as I said, we typically have 5 feet. We've had some at 8 feet. So we've had some docks at 8 feet. Those are on properties that obviously are a little bit longer. But this is typically the standard that you see. That's that you see throughout the town, other municipalities.
Are talking about flexibility, so, and I think it should be 8 foot total. How you divide it up, you divide it up. Because seawall cap is generally cement, if I'm not mistaken. It's
Concrete,
well,
yes,
not wood for a dock.
right.
And yeah, you may want to have a little more stability with a little wider cap. And you're okay with a 4-foot dock as opposed to a 5-foot dock. So I would
That's-
just have it with not mention what has to be what, just.
Just a
seawall.
maximum of 8.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
total
keep in
of 8.
mind, there may be some properties currently that may not comply. So if they do come in with, a proposal to install a new dock, seawall, that they would have to adjust accordingly.
And what's the no action right now? Like, what is?
The no action here is basically whatever FDP and Army Corps allows. So our code says that as far as encroachments, so long as you get the sign off from FDP and Army Corps, you can encroach as much as you can because they regulate the waterway.
Mhm.
We have a provision if there's certain waterways, canals or lakes that are not regulated by Army Corps, then you can encroach. I think it was 5 feet for docks, but that's not our case. As I mentioned several times at the public input meetings, at commission meetings, staff, we met with Army Corps at the beginning of COVID 4 years ago. They made it very clear that they regulate the waterway, the canals and the lakes. So the code clearly says if they regulate, then as long as they sign off on that, whatever the encroachment is, then that's good. That's the way the code currently reads.
Right, and if you wind up with a situation that becomes a health safety issue, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah.
Then if it's not a safe issue, we go back to the planning board on that particular issue.
So are we all good on, I'm recommending we go forward with an ordinance on the maximum of 8, like what Evelyn said.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're good with that one. Okay, next one, encroachment into water at 25 feet or 25% of waterway width. And then I guess the planning board added from wet face of seawall or bulkhead, which I think was an important clarification that
Yeah.
they did, right?
Because right now, obviously, we don't have anything in the code about this type
Right.
of encroachment. But I've discussed this with the marine expert, the proper terminology when it comes to measuring seawall from one seawall across the waterway to another seawall. And it is common to use the terminology of the wet face of the seawall. There could be other, sometimes they'll use west edge. There's a variety of
Mhm.
terminology that is acceptable, but
And that was
Yeah.
important because some people's lot lines actually are in the water. So
Right,
this clarifies
right.
that it's
Correct.
from
the
the
wet
wet
face,
face.
regardless
right.
if your seawall is outside the property line or within the property line.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that same water body we've been discussing next to Boca Highlands, there's actually water lots for the where they
Oh,
own the
right.
lot. So this way it would just be from the wet phase.
Yeah, so that seems like an important clarification.
And that's the seawall we're talking about here.
This is, this is not the seawall. This is the accessory marine.
Oh, this is the
facilities,
accessory,
right.
okay,
So,
yeah.
right, so accessory marine facilities, seawalls are not accessory marine facilities, they're their own
Okay.
entity, right? And of course, that would not include anything that's on the intercoastal waterway.
So it's a piling for a lift cannot
Right,
go. it
here's an
has to be within.
example. This is again from the public input meetings. This is an example of a proposed 25% encroachment. So here's, this is the Boca Highlands area.
Same area.
The canal width here is approximately 68 feet. And what's interesting is that the code requires for accessory marine facilities has to be in a canal that's 80 feet wide. Now, it doesn't say how to measure it from wet face, it doesn't give a measurement. So that's just another issue I just see now because it does require 80 feet. This is approximately 60. Again, until we see a survey, we'll just go with it's an approximate, but, so 68 feet at 25%, they would only be able to encroach 17 feet. Again, this is one of those lots that Mr. Rubin just mentioned that's in Bolito. They're individually owned. There's 14 of them. So yeah, they would be limited to the 25%, 17 feet. They couldn't go 25 feet here because the 25% is less.
Any public comment on this one? Yeah. Gonna come.
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. This one, I don't really have an opinion. I just had a question. And some of the data that was handed out, the recommended length of encroachment was 20 feet in some of the neighboring communities. And I just wondered why we, in concept, we're talking about 25 feet as opposed to 20 feet.
The 25 feet was again proposed by Mr. Bobby. His report is in your packet and he gave a justification for his proposed concepts. Those start on page 51 of your packets. And I think he referenced some other municipalities. Actually, if you go to page 52, that's where he addresses this 25 feet or 25%.
If I recall, it's like boat width plus your dock, plus your seawall cap, because it's going from the wet face. So you can only go, all that stuff combined can only be the 25 feet. So you might have 8 feet, like the 3-foot cap, 5-foot dock, and then you got 17 feet left to do what you want. If you got the whole 25, if not, it, comes down precipitous based on the calculation on that width. And you could find yourself much lower, but it was all stuff in there, is what was the driving piece to it.
Page 53. he goes into that.
Yeah, I believe there were some other municipalities that did have 20 feet. I have it on one of these tables. I could find it for you.
And did the marine expert comment on that? aspect?
Yes. Let's see. The marine expert report on these initial concepts are provided on page 62 of your packets. And he addresses, let's see. Yeah, on page actually 63, he addresses the encroachment. He says limitations to the distance structures can encroach in a waterway are standard practice and meet the intent to allow for safe navigation and minimize impacts to adjacent properties and views. Encroachment maximum distances on the order of 25 feet relative to the waterway edge are fairly common, though additional restrictions for narrow waterways are also common practice. And then he just states that a general 50-foot effective fairway width is a common design standard for residential canals.
Well, we would take care of that with the 25%. So it deals with the fact that there are narrow canals and you can't go out to 25 feet.
So I'm in favor with Ingrid drafting this, and if if we need to change it to 20 or some, we can, but at least I think it makes sense to start doing that.
I
ordinance.
think it would
Yes.
create fewer problems in
Okay.
the permit
Right.
stage and
yeah.
planning stage.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
I said it will create fewer problems in the planning and permit stage.
Yeah, if it's laid out, like if
Mhm.
people know that's what
Mhm.
they have to do, then they don't have to go back and forth because
Yep.
they see it's
Yep.
in the.
Then you don't buy a boat that's wider than will fit. I agree.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so I think we all are in favor of number 4, moving so far all of them.
Yeah,
we are in
moved.
favor. So changing the setback. So I'm actually not in favor of this. Number 5, my own personal opinion, I think we leave it the way it is, exactly the way it is. But
And I know that there are a lot of people up in Bird Beach specifically that like their 25-foot setbacks. They have wide pieces of property and they want to be separate. So even if we should change it, I wouldn't change it the same way for the whole town. If you are directly on the intracoastal, it perhaps could be, and your lot is above, we can come up with a number of, with feet wide for your lot. They should be allowed to have that 25 feet without worrying that the next door neighbor is going to come in and put 3 boats and come up within 10 feet of their property line.
Yes.
But on the other, in some of the canals, you've got multifamily homes, 3, 4, 5, and they can't have everyone have a boat if you have to be 25 feet. It is right now, it's 25 feet,
In
right?
single-family zoning districts. Right.
And I think in the multifamily, I don't think there is
No,
a setback.
There's no setback in multifamily. And let me also just add a little note. So it's 25 feet if you're a single-family zoning district. But if your lot is between 50 and 70 feet in width, then it's 15 feet in the single family.
Okay, so that does
Yeah, makes sense.
what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
right.
So
Makes sense.
I think for single family lots, we should leave it that way. And do something for the places of the homes on the canals that are narrow and, they don't want boats docking nose to nose.
Well, just to
Well, remember,
clarify, you can
mooring-
still
oh.
dock your boat
I was just
and
gonna say
have the edge
mooring,
of your
you can-
boat be
yes.
the property line. That's
Mhm.
not changing. It's always been that
Right.
way. It's just that the dock has to have a certain setback.
marine
It's
site
just that most people, when they dock their boat, they do, dock it within your dock. They don't,
Right.
I think in general, it probably does help influence people not to have their boat sit all the way at the edge, because if it's too small of a boat, it wouldn't have a dock
Right.
to sit at. I don't think we get a lot of complaints about the setbacks we have now. And to me, I just don't think we have enough of a consensus of homeowners to reduce the setbacks on the single family homes. I think if everyone was unified and said, yes, we wanted this, but I'm just not hearing that. So do we have any public comment on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. I think that a lot of this will be superfluous, given the sentiments that were most recently expressed before you came to a conclusion, but I'm strongly against this concept of changing these setbacks as outlined. And really, I have 3 main reasons for it. One is just, how did we get there? Because it seemed to come out of the blue with no one that I know asking for it. It didn't appear at any of the meetings that I went to as as something that needed to be done. It didn't appear in the consultant's report. It certainly wasn't in Vice Mayor Bobby's report some years ago. So just that process made me a little nervous, but forgetting about that, the other two main things are, one, because of safety, and then also because of aesthetics. And some of this has been alluded to already. But in terms of safety, you don't have to be a boat expert to understand that even with spring lines and doing the
That's right.
best docking available, that with changes in winds and changes in tide, boats are going to move. And you can't have boats docked nose to nose, or you're asking for accidents to happen. And the same thing goes if boats are packed in too tightly, people can't get on their lift safely. And just maneuvering becomes an issue that really that shouldn't be there. And in fact, this was specifically mentioned by the marine expert in one of his reports that were included in the folder, when he was talking about some of the areas in town that currently don't have any setback requirements, where docks are pretty much contiguous, and it actually was mentioned that that's really not the safest way to go. And then finally, in terms of aesthetics, again, a lot of us like our views. We're living on the ground floor, as it were, which is different. I know many people in town are in condos, and your view from the 10th floor is a lot different from your view when you go look out your back window or walk out into your backyard. And if somebody has a lift or a dock with a big boat moored right on the property line, when you have a boat on the lift, you're basically talking about having two containers as large as the ones on big cargo ships stacked right on top of each other, right on your property line. So you can imagine that if you're looking out, if you happen to be unlucky enough to have that on both your property lines, you've developed tunnel vision. I mean, you can't see anywhere except straight back. And that's not what a lot of residents, I think, bargained for. So I'm not going to say anymore because I think you guys are on the right track, and I don't want to tip things in the wrong direction, but I'm really strongly opposed to changing the setbacks in the residential single-family communities. Thank you.
Dr. Greenwald, what about in residential where it's not single family, where it's townhouses, 3, 4, 5, however many are in?
Well, I mean, I don't claim to be a marine expert. I mean, I used to joke with my family that sometimes I kind of dock by braille kind of thing. You like bounce off things a little bit and then get there. But so I don't claim to be a marine expert. I think what we're talking about, most of those have their own HOA or condo rules, so they can decide how they want to divide up their dock safely. So hopefully they're not too close together. In terms of their neighbor, I personally think that there should be a space, meaning that they shouldn't be really lot line to lot line either. But that's a personal opinion, and I'm not trying to point myself off as any kind of a marine expert at all, because I'm not.
There should be some space, but most of them, you can't have 25-foot setbacks because
No.
then there's no property left.
No, I agree. And I think that should be different. And I'd leave that up to people who, like Ingrid and other folks who know much more about this than I do. From a strict boating standpoint, though, putting boats nose to nose is just not a good idea.
So can we agree not to change it for single-family homes and think about what to do for the multifamily homes on some of these canals? Because it's not big buildings, they're townhouses and blocks of townhouses. And if you leave it at 25-foot setbacks, you're taking away their ability to have a boat in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be like no change, like no action.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to take something away from those properties.
What is it
So-
now?
Right now,
It's not
we have just the setbacks for the single family
Oh.
zoning districts, right? Multifamily, there's no setback currently. Just if you're in a single family zoning district.
I would leave it as it is
I
then,
think it's a
Yes,
no
I
action.
agree.
all the way around.
Yep, leave it.
Whoever did the 25 feet and no setbacks did it right.
Yeah.
If I could just add, just for the record, on the bottom of page 53, which is Greg Bobby's initial report, on the top of 54, he does talk about the side setbacks and what his recommendations are. He gets into comparing Boca and Hillsborough Beach and Ocean Ridge. So he does give a little bit of a position on that. I just want to clarify for the record.
Yeah, I think through all the discussions, I think people recognize, yeah, different towns do different things, but I feel like the consensus was people just wanted to keep Highland Beach the way that it was.
Yes.
That's the feedback I got.
So a no action
So
option is
no
what's on the
action
table, I guess.
option for number 5.
Right.
So number 5 should not be a draft ordinance. Okay, next item, requiring a ladder for every 50 feet. And then the board recommendation was for every 100 feet.
My concern is the cost. For facilities that do not have ladders. I think ladders are important. I don't know what the cost is. If anyone has, any input here?
But also with the cost, even if the cost is reasonable, because I don't think it would be a burden in most cases, there is the safety issue. There are a lot of people, particularly in the private homes, who don't want to have a ladder that allows somebody
Right.
to climb out and onto their property when they're not there. And a lot of those homes are with people who are snowbirds or part-time residents. And it's a safety issue.
Yeah,
I would, in watching the discussion on the planning board, I would agree with their recommendation of the 100 feet, but I would leave it on for discussion to go with the future.
I have heard that feedback that homeowners are very concerned about putting a ladder and the safety. I wonder if we could make it just a recommendation as opposed to like a hard
I
We
mean,
can
requirement or
encourage.
something, like an encourage. like
We
what
can
did.
encourage, it's not a
encourage.
requirement, we encourage.
Right, not make it a hard requirement, just make it an encouragement or something like that.
I-
Because some homeowners really feel very strongly about not having the ladder. And is it their responsibility to provide safety for anyone? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But
Is there,
I'd like to leave it on as a discussion because I think it's important from the safety perspective.
can
Okay.
we tie it into the length of the dock perhaps? As opposed to every 100 feet, so that instead of affecting the single-family homes, there's a lot more security in the bigger buildings. So maybe some of those larger docks, I mean, a lot of them don't have docks at all. It's just a seawall. So it's not,
I
So you're,
feel-
yeah, so you're basically saying if you have a less than 100-foot dock, it's not a requirement, but if you have more than 100-foot dock or some threshold, then it's a requirement.
yeah, but I mean, I need to have somebody really think it through for the parameters. I think it needs to be discussed further.
now I have a question that what you just said brought to mind. This only affects the docks. What if there's no docks? What if there's just the seawall? You take Bird Beach, they have large expanses. On the intercoastal, what if someone falls in the water? They also, I mean, you're going to
Most of
attach,
them, to be honest, most of them do have docks.
Yeah.
You know, some of them are smaller than others. They don't go the whole length, whole width of the property, but just about every one of them has a dock.
Behind you is the concept that was at presented to the public at the public input meeting, just to show you what other municipalities, right, they reference it to the dock. Like in this one, dock, Boca Raton, minimum 1 ladder. Manalapan and Gulfstream, they just say it's permitted. So that's almost like an encouragement. Like if you want to do it, you can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. It's not a requirement, but it's if you want it, you could do it. And then, right, Delray Beach references docks, and then they reference finger piers, docking facilities, docks, a combination of docks. And then Lighthouse Point also, they reference docks, not, right, if it's just a seawall. Not a requirement in those municipalities.
So you're saying it's for both the dock or the seawall would be ladder?
I mean, that would be up to the commission, but just, I wanted to give you perspective as to what other municipalities, I don't see that any of them, at least the ones here, they just reference for a dock.
I know when we were out and some of the seawalls are high, if you did fall in, there's no way getting
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Ladders are very
Right.
important.
So have we ever had, do we know, do we have a history of that? Like where someone
Yeah.
couldn't get, we do?
I don't know of it. I mean, the one thing that helps us with safety now is having the Marine unit and eventually our fire chief here will be able to do water rescue. So if it does happen, at least we now have a mechanism to respond. Before we never.
But
could
there
respond.
were a couple of accidents where people were in the water, and as I understand it, it was not easy to get them out.
I mean, if I would guess, and I'll leave this to our fire chief, but if you were injured in the water, I don't know, it'd be hard to get you out on a dock, on a little metal ladder and pull the
Right,
bottom. I think
yes.
you're gonna need to scoop and load up or somehow rather than just
Mhm.
throw it up. I mean, you have to be an able-bodied person to pull up one of those ladders.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, it's not easy to
Yeah.
go up those ladders. Can we table that part?
Well, I guess we need to give direction on the ordinance. I mean, I guess my one vote would be to make it permitted, like.
Permitted or
not a requirement,
encouragement, I
but,
think.
Yeah.
That's just one. out of
I would leave it.
them.
I would leave it. I'd let it, yes, I'd let a condo association make their rules. I think by having it in the code as permitted, and just the fact that we're dealing with it to the extent that the public here pays attention, they may address it.
Yeah, but has it ever not been permitted?
Again, the code is silent on ladders.
Yeah,
So I would recommend as opposed to permit. Because they're already permitted to do it.
So a little bit more stronger language on that,
Yeah.
encouraging, I guess.
Yeah. So you want it as a recommendation?
You recommend it.
My feelings are a little different. My feeling is as a requirement. And again, when the planning board talked about it, they discussed the necessity of 50 feet versus 100 feet. And the idea of whether you can climb out or not, being able to hold on until something came to help you out. And I think it's an important safety issue.
Yeah.
Any public comment on this item?
I agree with that. If somebody was drowning and I was saving them, bringing them in, I would have something, a ladder to hold on to till the fire department came or police or whatever.
Okay, so what do we have? Count. Or we could draft it as a requirement and then we can always discuss it.
As a
more.
requirement, mandatory, or as recommended,
I guess it doesn't matter. I mean,
recommended.
we can decide quickly whether it's recommended or mandatory, but
Mhm.
then we're gonna have the approval process.
But do you want to add a number, 100 feet? Do you want to add a threshold or you just want to make it a blanket required without providing any?
I mean, I think 100,
Guidance.
but I mean,
Then again, that was a lot of
Right.
discussion with the planning board and they came to that same conclusion. And I would agree with it.
Yeah, but I would
So
still,
100 feet?
100, yeah. Maybe
Uh,
can you give us the two options? Can you write it like, if we did it a requirement, it would be this way, and if it would be encouragement, highly encouraged, it would be that other way? Like, give us those two alternatives as we go through the ordinance.
I would exempt the single-family homes directly on the intercoastal and just recommend that they do it as opposed to require them to do it.
Why?
Because it's a safety issue. Their homes are vulnerable. And somebody can come along and tie up to that ladder and they can climb in and there's nobody there, particularly at night. And, we have to protect that too.
But did you say you would exempt them?
I would exempt them from the requirement of having one and recommend
Mhm.
that they have one.
Can we do it like that? Like,
We can draft it in the alternative and
Okay.
you can decide this later down the road. That's fine.
You can do it by district too, where single family homes, it's
Right, you can-
permitted, condos must have one every 100 feet because you have more people congregating as a rational point of discussion, I guess.
Is there anything now in our ordinance relative to seawalls in that respect with the ladders?
The code is silent on ladders.
On
There's
that
no
too?
regulation regarding
Okay.
ladders, right? And as you all saw, when you went out on the intercoastal, some have, some don't. Some single family areas have, some don't. It's a little bit of
Yeah, a lot of us have
mixed
that.
bag.
I mean, I know I have two at my house. So a lot of us have them. And it's just those people who have chosen not to have them. They feel pretty strongly about not having them. I mean, I'm fine maybe having all these alternatives and then we can have a more formal
could do some
vote when it
options.
comes to when we act, and then it'll be more clear. So this is just the drafting of the ordinance at this point. So maybe is there three options? Making it mandatory,
Right.
making it encouraged, and then the third option, which is carving out the single family homes on the main intercoastal.
Right.
Making it recommended for them, but then mandatory for everyone else. And then we can just kind of see how it goes through the process. And we can have a formal vote on it. I think
That's
it'll be
good.
more clear.
It's good.
Okay. Seawall height. So the recommended from the planning board is base flood elevation +1, and right now there's no.
Well, right now we have a maximum all seawalls on the west side of A1A have to be at base flood elevation or higher. So the way the wording is now is somebody could come in with something really high and say, well, your code says or higher and I'm higher, so I should be compliant. So I think that was the intent with having possibly a maximum seawall height. So again, here's the concept as it was presented at the public input meetings. Again, the no action option, if we had an exceptionally high seawall come in tomorrow, what do we have in our code now? We have the marine expert. And they would be able to chime in on standards in the industry about seawall height. And provide some sort of,
One of the
Mhm.
problems of doing that is we're encouraging people to raise their seawalls. And because of flooding issues, so people are building their homes up higher to prevent future flooding. I don't know if saying it's +1 is going to be sufficient if the whole property is up higher.
right, and the base flood elevations, as was indicated, they go up too, right? The west side is 6 feet now currently, but when you go to the FEMA map, it shows a pending at 7. So these will change, right, in time.
Yeah, I'm in favor of
Yeah.
leaving this off. I don't know how everybody else feels. Because like you said, Evelyn, people might want to do, why prevent someone from really protecting the property on,
Right, I mean,
I think this came about because some people didn't like being next to somebody who had it too high, but.
I
mean,
think that's probably true, and that creates an unfortunate situation. But we are recommending that people raise everything because we have a potential for terrible flooding. And so far, we've been fortunate. It hasn't been so terrible, but I mean, you hear stories all the time of people that have never flooded before and they've got 15 feet on their properties. And if we can avoid that, that would be a good thing.
So you're in favor of leaving it off?
I'm in favor of leaving it off right now, yes.
What do you guys think? Yep, leaving it off. Good. Okay, so I think we're in favor of leaving it off.
So
Not-
no action.
No action item on. Yeah. Any public comments on that? Okay, well, a lot of discussion. Lengthy topic, that's for sure. We're ready to move on. Thank you very much,
Sure.
Ingrid. Very
Thank you.
excellent work, thorough
Yes.
work. I commend you for that. It's excellent. Okay, fire rescue implementation update.
Afternoon, everyone. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Glenn Joseph, Fire Rescue. Commissioners, we're getting close, right?
Yes.
We were driven by at night,
Looks
by the
beautiful.
station.
Yeah, it was.
Looks
Yeah, it's lit up pretty nicely. As far as the construction goes, the elevator state inspection is scheduled for Thursday. That's the last major thing. Then will allow us to bring all the rest of the heavy equipment upstairs and refrigerators and that kind of thing. Medication dispensers, that's gonna get us very close to getting done. Landscaping should begin later this week and should have it all greened out by mid next week. We expect to have most of the subcontractors off the site by the middle of next week. So it'll be just punch out lists and hit the odds and ends. As furniture delivery, say that 3 times, began this week. We got some of the furniture upstairs already. For the conference room and the EOC, we're bringing in the table, so your commission chambers are almost free to be reoccupied. Other than that, we're just moving forward step by step. We still expect to be ahead of schedule by, or at least completed on schedule by the 15th. Equipment, we had a couple of delays. One is the compressor. The manufacturer, SCBA for breathing air for firefighters, was supposed to be delivered in February. It was pushed back to March. Now it's sometime in April. So that the vendor in Pompano Beach has offered to let us use a portable system for our training and stuff. So they've already agreed to let us use that. So it's not going to delay training any more than it would, but we would like to have it installed by the 19th for the grand opening. But I don't know, it may not happen. Maybe have some time after that. Equipment wise, the fire apparatus, everything's done on there. We had them tested. All the labs were tested last night, including the aerial system. We have to do that annually to make sure that there's no weaknesses or damage to the structures. All the hose was loaded on and tested last night. So it's basically a fire truck. And we'll be using it for training the rest of the week. And over the weekend, we'll park it over here at the in the station. So it'll be visible this weekend. So maybe come see. Same thing with the rescue. We had to make some alterations to some of the compartments to get the equipment in there. That's all finished up. And so we're just finishing some odds and ends, and that'll be delivered as well. We've been delaying the delivery of the equipment because of the interface between the front apron and A1A. So we built and designed the apron based on the new A1A after it's done. So there was a 4 to 6 inch gap between the current roadway and where it is right now. We didn't want to shave it off because then we'd have to redo it again next year when they're finished. So what they opted to do was to kind of put a asphalt transition. And so we had to put several layers. We've put in 2 layers so far. And then we'll put 2 more layers to make the transition a smoother operation. But that's been the hold up in having the units delivered to the site. And we've had it not to, we wanted not to compress the asphalt beforehand. Kaufman then didn't want us to do that. Staffing, you met your firefighters. So everybody's on board. We have 28 firefighters, 4 captains, 8 drivers, and 16 firefighters. Some of them are brand new. A few of them are, about 9 out of 16 are new. And we have people with years of service. So the drivers, most of them have at least 5 years or more as drivers in the service. So we have good experience. And the captains, as you could tell when you first met them a few weeks ago, they're pretty solid people. So I think we're on a good track of getting things done. The grand opening or the open house scheduled for the 19th, we talked about 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. We started the RSVPs to all the dignitaries and VIPs. We had actually 164 sent out, and we've received comments from 63 so far accepted. We'll be sending it out again tomorrow, just as a reminder. We're closing it off on, well, Monday morning at midnight. We shut off and we'll use that as our planning metrics. The manager wants to plan for 300 people or thereabouts.
Well, yeah, we have limitations on space, so, but I'm guessing
Residents.
it'll grow a little bit as it gets closer, and I don't want, you know, I hear my mother in my ear, make sure there's enough food for everybody. So I just want to make sure we have.
And
food
plain underwear, you have to.
Yeah, right. Make sure it's for everybody, Mark. All right, we'll make sure we got food. So I want to make sure everybody's got something to eat and they have a place to see, can be seen and see the programming, get a chance to tour, things of that nature.
So we're working on the programming, finalizing that right now, and so the tents and all the food will be ordered probably next week, just to make sure we have enough time to make all that stuff happen. And we'll have a good time on the 19th. We'll try to make it as well laid back and as pompous as possible, so we'll have a little bit of both. We'll try to get Father Horgan to do the invocation and a few comments from the mayor and commissioners that want to make some comments. And I'll say a few words if I have to. So other than that, it's gonna be pretty laid back, maybe half hour of some speeches and comments and talking, and then get into the music and food and have people wander around the station and ask questions. Firefighters will all be there. They'll be in uniform with a name tag, not the ones who are wearing today, but full uniform with the name tags and everything. So they could be addressed and know who they are, begin that process. So as far as community activity in the last 2 weeks since we met last, we did a CPR class for Toscana again. We trained about 15 people in CPR, and there were 3 classes held. Mr. Giamatti wanted to do it himself, so we loaned him the equipment to get it done. So he did 3 classes of 20 each, so he did tell a bunch of people in his building. So the word's getting out that people are getting involved and they're asking questions, and it's only, I think it's going to get bigger over the time when we get fully ensconced into. We had a good meeting with Delray for as far as the interface goes. They will be delivering the equipment that they're using right now 2 weeks early, so we can actually go through it and clean everything up and get it ready for the open house. So that's really good for us because we get to see what's in the units and what we have to do and what additional equipment we have to buy. So that's very, very nice of them. And they will be here on the 30th. We try to make that transition on the 30th. So people are not leaving here and going home at night. So they'll be here on the 30th. We'll be ready to go on the 30th of April. We'll be running the call starting at 7 a.m. on the 30th of April. They'll be there as backup if something doesn't work, radios didn't announce it or whatever. We have nothing to be delayed. We'll have somebody there on site, but coming the 30th through that night, we'll be running full steam ahead. That's the plan as it stands right now. Questions?
Sounds like we're in great shape.
Mhm.
Marshall, what are we gonna do about parking for people? If you're expecting 300
Okay,
people.
So,
let me get that first, and then you'll correct me. So when we get all the people that are accepted the RCPs, we'll send them back a thank you note with a map of where to park. And probably we'll
Yeah,
make
so-
arrangements.
Father Horgan's been gracious to let us continue using the church parking lot. So we'll be using that primarily as our parking. We'll reserve a few for handicap on site for
Mhm.
those that just can't make that journey.
Sure.
Chief said he'll try to get the golf cart again to get people from St. Lucy's that don't or can or aren't interested in making that walk. And we'll go from there. So he's been great letting us use it, and Father Horgan and I have developed a pretty good relationship where I think he's going to allow us to continue to use it on a regular basis. So I think parking is going to just do that because the Vice Mayor and I just talked about it yesterday. Parking is going to continue to be an issue for us. It just is. So I'm glad and happy that Father Horgan and the church are allowing us on a long-term basis to have that relationship, because we're going to start needing it even for normal operations.
Right.
Which somewhat concerning, but in the interim, we're good that we can still use that parking lot during the day for special events.
So for that special event, we'll send them a thank you for coming and a map, directions how to park at the church, and then we'll have some kind of a shuttle service back and forth for people who don't want to walk.
Fantastic. So I mean, I just feel like this grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony is such a major milestone for our community. And I hope people come, and I think that this is something to be celebrated, and so very exciting, and something that we can really be proud of. And a huge thank you to you and your team and, you know, all these employees look fantastic and it's very exciting. It's just amazing how it's all come together. And it's really a historic event for the town of Highland Beach to start our fire rescue department.
Well, I agree with you completely. I think it's for a town our size, the rest of Palm Beach County is taking notice of what's happening here. And it's not me. I keep telling you that. It's the whole town. Everybody's all on board, and I'm not gonna call any department heads anymore. But everybody's behind this from the day one. We have had a lot of support, a lot of help from everybody in the town, outside the town, the residents. I've come in, I've had retirees come and say, hey, what can I do to help? Do you need anything? The Fire and Police Foundation have been outstanding. They've been meeting on a regular basis, asking us what we need and how can they help us fund stuff. So I think it's a whole community effort, but it takes a whole community to do it right, you know, and so that's the important thing. And your support has been outstanding. And it's huge for everybody else in the county, all the smaller communities looking at it, it's like, hey, they can do it. Why can't we do it? You know?
I've had a
So-
lot of positive feedback from people seeing the captains walking up and down the street.
Yeah,
They thought that this was just great, and I hope people who they met along their walk would introduce themselves or just say hi
they do.
or
They do.
welcome.
They do. We've been trying to encourage them to interact more, and I think the open house is gonna make it even more an open environment. Come on in, walk through. I've done several tours over the last 2 weeks. Hard hats are off now. So, you know, if you want to come by, you have family, friends, who want to stop by and see the building, you could stop by and get a hold of myself or anybody else and we'll walk you through the building.
Yeah, I think it's terrific that the community wants to be involved.
Yeah.
Which is a very nice thing.
That's an unusual thing.
It is unusual, and to use Natasha's word, it's fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for your support. We all appreciate it.
Thank you, and
You're
it
the best.
it really hits home when we saw so many
Yes.
people. The first thought I had, oh my God, look at that payroll.
That's what I say.
No, Marshall is sharpening his pencil. He's pretty
But the-
good. Sharpening the
The
pencil.
residents are very proud
They should be,
of the town.
should be. Because they said it could
Thank
not be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I have just a question. Does the start of the work by FDOT interfere at all in this?
Well, it's always going to interfere with the response. You know, anything that inhibits or traffic is going to interfere with our ability to respond. The thing is that it's unavoidable. And so what we do is we try to minimize any delays. So every day, you know, the captains will be asked to drive down, on our operations chief to drive down, see where the obstructions are, let the guys know what to expect when they go down the road. We'll be using, you could either delay getting to the call or you could delay getting out of the station. So we'll minimize the stuff that we can control and try to maximize or limit the stuff that we can't control. So it's just a matter of a give and take. You know, so we just have to work through it and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, the people from FDOT yesterday said that if they are notified when the truck is coming out, they can make arrangements to let it go through smoothly.
Like we do with the bridges. So we call the bridges when we're gonna go over, let them know we bring the patient over way before we need to bring the patient over. That way they hold bridges down. So we do that routinely. So that's something that could probably happen here as well. If you have a cell phone number, we'll call, hey, we're coming down to such and such avenue. Let us through, and they'll block the traffic and hold it for us. So I think we have ways, because everybody here has experience, been doing this before. They've had those kind of activities before. We have ways of working around the construction and the obstructions and making it as efficient as possible.
There's no way to avoid some of these delays.
Right.
However, however long they take, it would be less time than it would take for it to come from the mainland to get here.
I have no
Mhm.
comment on that. But,
That's right. That's right.
but yes, we will make every effort to make this as smooth a period as possible during during the construction phase. But life happens, and we have to, what we have to do is adjust to our responses to a situation we find. We can control as much as we can, but the things that we can't control, we have to be able to work around it to get the outcomes that we're looking for.
Well, I want to thank you again.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
just a-
thank me, thank the team.
It's just an amazing task that was undertaken by everyone, and you really, we're so very proud of you and the work that you've done and the team that you put together.
Well, Marcia's got some more gray hairs too over there. Just letting you know, I noticed the difference. So, thank you very much. I'll
Thank
pass
you.
it on to the rest of
Yeah,
the team.
thank
Thank you.
I would have to.
Moving on to Florida Department of Transportation, the Triple R project update.
Yeah, so yesterday there was the condo meeting. Um,
Not well attended.
not well attended, but they didn't give us any information we didn't have from the other meeting. So I think they said they were committing to, they're starting on at the north,
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what they said, starting at.
but they started saying
Luton.
they were gonna start in the south, but eventually we got them to say that they're gonna start on the north, but start with the drainage work, which still requires lane closures, even though they said, don't worry about it, it's not gonna block traffic, but it will.
It will.
But yeah, so they're gonna start north, move their way down. That's kind of, while folks wanted the south, it would be nice to improve that intersection. So when we start really getting in the center of town to be able to move folks to the north when they get stuck. That's it. That's where we're at. I have no idea who the contractor is. Still, I mean, they're starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We're gonna need,
I have no idea who's doing the work. I don't see any signs out there, so maybe tomorrow they're gonna start delivering cones or something. I don't know. But tomorrow is still their start date, they said. So
Now, are they,
good to, we're gonna need good follow-up on the things that they committed to. They even again said yesterday they would be signing, asking for local traffic, and things of that nature by the entrance. So we're just gonna have to follow up and make sure that they're doing what they're committing to do.
correct. Yep. I hope we can get them to, yeah, they're starting tomorrow, so. I don't know. So, the project scope hasn't changed and we know that their intention is to start at the.
And one of the points that came up that everybody may or may not know is when they start, they're gonna start as Marshall said on the drainage, and then they're gonna come back and do the paving as a second step. So it's not a section of drainage and paving and then the next section. So it's gonna be a couple of phases.
now this starts at Highland on the beach. So that whole from the bridge, that portion of Del Rey is not being touched.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that right?
No, it
Oh,
is.
they are.
Right.
Starting at
Okay.
Linton.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
Linton and
They're
Lane.
starting right at the bridge.
Yes.
Is that
Yep.
it?
Right
On
there.
our side of the bridge? I
But-
mean,
Yeah.
the
but
right.
The whole reason for starting up there
mhm.
is because there isn't a long enough turn lane.
Yeah.
And you get backed up there. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I thought we got backed up at the south, but nothing like they get backed up at that bridge. So that's why they're starting
Okay.
from that end.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Next week, for this week.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to the strategic plan.
So, did some updates since last time, and now you'll see included the CIP. There are a few typos we have to punch out of that. But again, it's our first crack at getting you that 5-year CIP with project descriptions
Mhm.
on a year-to-year basis, things that we know that are upcoming. Again, the schedule is not firm. We do that during budget season to make sure you're comfortable going this direction, and at times a project or two we just can't get to, or we remove because it becomes unnecessary, or we partner with a different project and move it to a later period of time. So the CIP is the supplement to this strategic priorities plan, again, that which then gets us into starting in the middle of this month, we start the budget process where we start working with department heads to develop expenditures for the next year. David starts his forecasting and really starts looking at what's the next year gonna look like. I'm curious budgetarily what next year will look like. our markets are still strong, but softening is what the property appraiser is saying, so. You know, what that means as a final number, we'll have to wait and see. I think we'll be in solid shape, it just, I don't know that you're gonna see 13-14% again, but,
Following half, right?
yeah, so I mean, I think half is a reasonable, strong number, but a softening of what we had started seeing. But again, so we updated, I have a few new projects that came in from the last meeting. I didn't get into getting descriptions. But this is something we should, continue on a monthly basis. That way we're constantly looking, talking, updating progress. And go from there. So the couple of the new ones, we didn't have the marine facility docking. We wanted to make sure that was in their electric vehicle ordinance or design protocols. Fire inspection compliance, condominiums. I guess now would be a good time to kick off some of that where we're finding stuff. Just hasn't been done in a long time. A lot of it is housekeeping. 80% is for the condos to do some housekeeping. Maintenance rooms, storage closets. There's some work that needs to be done. But I think it's gonna take a large sum of the fire marshal's time and the commissions we're gonna get some pushback, and we just have to slowly and methodically kind of lay out the reasons why we have to be compliant with the fire code. For whatever reason, there hasn't been a lot of compliance and inspection. I mean, it was kind of done, but not followed through. So we've got some issues out there that Chief and Matt are gonna have to start pursuing. So when that's why I said once a month we start doing it, you'll start to hear and see what those are. We'll put a list together. So you'll be able to begin to see, what's that status. And again, it's critical to us to have the condos in a safe operating condition, especially as it comes to fire systems. So we'll get there, but it's a big enough project that we should keep an eye on. It's going to take a lot of resources. But it's something that should be on your radar screen.
And critically important, right? I mean, like.
Some of
it
them are,
really-
some are, I'm shocked. Would be a limited. Yeah, Chief, why don't you take the heat on this one? But it's part of, we're taking over, and then as part of their effort is to go to assess our condition, what has been going. We never really paid attention operation from our organization. We kind of defaulted. So
Yeah, so Glenn Joseph again, fire rescue. The issue has always been mostly, like I said, 80% storage, inappropriate storage of fuels, propane, compressed cylinders inside the building, and they're supposed to be stored in cages outside the building. Storing on stairwells, under stairwells, out of fire escapes, fire exits. But there's some about 20% that's equipment based. Fire protection systems have not been maintained. They're rusted through leaks. They're cohabitating the same compartment with a fire pump and the electrical system, which is not allowed under code. So they'll have to build partitions and some of those things. But some of them will have to be one-way valves put in the waterways. So that's expensive. Moving some of them have their underground piping that has to be brought above ground. So that's going to be expensive. So about 80% of it is stuff that we're going to send a letter out to all the condominiums saying, hey, these are the things that you need to clean up. You need to get the storage combustibles out of the electrical rooms. You got to get combustibles and storage out of the elevator rooms. You got to get all the stuff out of no flammable liquids inside the building if you have a high-rise building. It has to be stored outside. I don't know where you store them. I don't care where you store them. It can't be inside the building. You can't have propane cylinders inside of a high-rise building. It's just not allowed. I mean, because those can accelerate a fire and make things bad. So again, mostly housekeeping stuff. We'll get pushback because they've been doing it like that for years, apparently, from talking to some of the residents, and nobody's ever said anything about it. So this is going to be a new dialogue we're going to have with them. It's going to be a continuing dialogue because we're not charging them for inspections, so we could probably schedule them. Right now, they're being charged for them, but we're not going to charge them in the future when we take over. So these are the kind of decisions that you have to make. But there's some high dollar fire protection systems that have been not only maintained, but in some cases disassembled for years, and they have not been marked, identified, inspected, whatever. So those are gonna be the high dollar 20% that you're gonna get a little pushback from. And so prepare yourselves, because I mean, we have to make those buildings safe. Our fire protection crews 7, they're gonna be well trained, they have all the equipment, but we can't allow things to be in a hazardous condition that put them to work. We try to avoid them going to work. That's the whole preemption thing, forward thinking. So initially, there's gonna be some friction. Hopefully, we could get compliance, and then we'll smooth things out over the years. But it's the same way everywhere. It was the same way in Boca Raton for many years, and then it took us a couple, 3, 4, 5 years to start to learn that these things are what needs to happen. And then something will happen over here. We'll have some friction in the beginning, but then they're gonna begin to understand that we're not looking at it for us, because we don't make any money off of it. This is for your safety, for your health and safety, for the people that live in the building, so.
I
It's,
fully support that. I mean, yeah, they just, that safety is the most important.
yeah, but it can become kind of, vigorous. So you'll just prepare yourself. You'll get complaints, and we will give them as much time as they need. I brought Matt here for a reason. Matt is one of those guys that navigated all that stuff in Boca Raton. So he knows how to talk to condominiums. He knows how to talk to the HOAs and give them the time that they need, because we know what it costs. And there's a huge lift with all the other stuff with reserves and the engineering inspections. So we're cognizant of all those things. We're not, looking at it in the vacuum and say, hey, this is fire, you have to do this. We're looking at everything together, and we want to give them enough time to get those changes made. But what has to happen is at some point, they have to have a plan moving forward, become compliant with all of those requirements, because it's for their own safety and the safety of the people that respond to those buildings.
Thank you. So we've got the priorities. I got some direction and guidance. Take a look at the CIP if you have any questions on projects. We'll fine tune as latter years become active years. We'll get better pricing, because stuff 5 years from now, who knows exactly, but I tasked Public Works, so Pat Sergio kind of looked at where we think those costs are gonna be. They work back with public safety, so you'll see stuff that we've bought for fire that in 5 years tends to need to be replacement. Think of like extraction tools. They're big enough that we need to capitalize them. They're not big costs like, oh my God, we forgot. It's just stuff that wears out over time. Stuff with the police, cameras, security, vehicle replacements, all that stuff is starting to get packed in here. So, because that is one of our critical strategic priorities, to maintain the assets which we are entrusted. So how do we do that? So that's in there in that plan, and we'll tweak it as we get into budget. Like, is it really going to cost that much? Is it really that important? So we are blessed here that we don't have to make too hard of decisions when it comes to capital planning. But like, as I'd indicated, when that discretionary sales tax ends in 25, we lose a chunk of money that's been good to take care of the little stuff, if you will. But we'll be able to do that. The water stuff has been, we have to keep a pretty good eye on for the water plant, water and sewer systems, the distribution and collection systems. So we're a pretty good handle on those. And we use our engineer and things we have to report on our permits to operate. So those numbers are pretty good, and they're tied into our rate structure. So we've allocated for some of those big tickets. They're like, oh my gosh, how we get, it's built into the rate structure for some of the stuff in the water plant. We've already accounted for it in those rate increases. So that's in the enterprise fund. So it's a good, we're getting there, we're taking the next step. So now we got a strategic plan. Here's a fully active CIP that all of this leads back then into our budget and our 5-year forecast model. All our strategic alignment is coming together. All the departments are focused. Everybody's on point and on task, and we're humming along.
Sounds good. And can it be posted to the website?
Sure,
too, all of
sure.
that?
We'll get
Yeah.
those up, and
Okay.
again, like I say in the it's like a working document, because you never really get to a definitive start and stop with strategic planning or CIP. It always continues to change and morph and grow. And my goal would be to at least once a month, the first meeting of the month, is to here's some updates and kind of stay on that. So we all get in that process thinking of where do we go? What have we done? Why is this falling behind? Where are the entry signs, right? I mean, I get that all the time. Right, Chief? Where are the entry signs, right? So we got to figure this, they're in for permits, they're not in for permits. It didn't have that. So some of those things, once we we get to a point where like, where is it? So, we're working on all those items.
Just for disclosure, I presented an open discussion,
Mm.
with Marshall as it relates to parking. In my opinion, big problem. We all know it's a big problem, especially for the day-to-day parking for the library use and so forth. And I ask that we reevaluate and look at the old fire station strategically. And if there's a opportunity for level parking with multiple use of the lower level and perhaps with employee parking in that structure. Very expensive to do, to look at what we do, but I think it should be looked at. Because in the long run, for the residents, they gotta be accessible to the facilities and the amenities that we have here, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, because I've noticed that over the last couple of weeks, even if we open up the 8 spots that are left next to the fire station, there are days here where there are none. During the day, there's just no open spots. You know, Lois still does get a lot of day-to-day traffic while it's moves in and out, transient, if you will. Some people stay longer and we had to change programming. And some of it was really popular daytime program. We just can't provide it. We have nowhere to put people. And we're not talking big events, but you get 10, 15 cars, which isn't unreasonable. There's times that we can't get 10, 15 cars. You might get 2. So to the vice mayor's point, we're gonna have to at some point figure, that's why I said building that relationship with the church has been good, because I think from time to time, we might have to start having staff actually park at the church all the time to free up some of that spacing. So we probably should take a look at that. And I think we'll be bringing some of our engineering contracts that you guys for us to negotiate that have some architects and maybe some site planning evaluations. I know Kaufman Lynn said they would do one for free. Maybe I like those terms. So maybe we have them take a look and make some suggestions of what we would expect to do some things, and just to have an idea moving forward, because that was definitely a big CIP project. If we were to do something, parking garage, building demolition, redoing site space, can be
Very expensive.
very expensive. And you all know, especially the condo folks, it's building anything of commercial size is a big task, especially here on the coast. So
Well, we have the issue of, we have no, very limited day-to-day that you just explained, but also as far as any community festivities. I mean, we wanted to grow the communication and the community events. So I think, and David, I think that's, very good. We need to focus on that. So just to figure out, how can we maximize the space? If we have entertainment space, where would it be? I mean, we were looking at that, but I understand
Right.
it's not for now to discuss. It's going forward, but even, a leveled parking, perhaps we just need that.
those are things we should look at and see how big of a leap would it be for us,
Moving on to Milani Park. I still have my one meeting to schedule, and our consultant is having those follow-up meetings with the commissioners. So, and we're monitoring the agendas to see if it does come up on the agenda, but hope to have more updates in the future.
I think basically, next start getting more dates. So those that feel like we're quiet or silent, we're working on stuff that just not really much to report yet. We're putting those next blocks in place and the next strategic steps.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on, resolution number 2024-005. A resolution of the Town Commission of Highland Beach declaring the results of the municipal referendum election held on March 19th, 2024, providing for an effective date. So yes, thank you to everyone who came out and voted and supported the referendum questions. So Town Clerk, I guess, we just make a motion on the resolution? Okay, yeah, so thank you. All right, excellent. We could have a motion.
I move that we accept resolution number 2024-005.
Second that.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Next item, item B, consideration of a proposed resolution of the Town Commission of Highland Beach, naming the Highland Beach Fire Rescue Building Station Number 120 in honor of former Mayor Douglas Hillman for having served with distinction as the mayor of the town of Highland Beach from March 2020 through March 2023. And of course, recognizing all that he did in establishing and the fire rescue department.
So this is, if you will, step one.
Okay.
Or it could be step one in the last step. It's all up to you. This is the appropriate lever to pull to start that process. We pass a resolution. Now accompanying the resolution is, how do we want to memorialize that resolution? So that's, I've said some stuff, folks have been like, maybe this, maybe that. So we got to figure that part out. The preliminary conversation, something in the lobby, something more formal in the lobby. So when the public goes into the fire station, there is that formal recognition versus something big on the outside. We don't want to take away from the general public knowing that it's the fire station or doing something that, so, is that where you want me to go? We could get an architect to look at it. Have you seen something you liked? Those are the things we can do. It won't be done, in the next couple weeks, but it's something we would move towards. And I guess I'm just looking for a little guidance, direction. Is where you'd like to look at it, something you want to see?
Should come as no surprise. I'm a big proponent of this. I think the idea of having a picture and a little history inside the reception area. But I also think we can do, like, right outside this building, there's a tasteful plaque. Something like that. So that something on the outside, but not big, not taken away from anything, just Douglas Hillman Memorial Firehouse or something along those lines.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I definitely could see the inside. I was just pondering, what would that, I don't know what would be outside. I wouldn't want to take
like
anything
a-
away from,
No, it's like we have a plaque outside.
just a plaque outside.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah,
No,
something,
there's like one right here outside the library, something similar
Yes.
to that.
something tasteful, and a history would be wonderful honoring him.
This is an understated town.
Yeah.
And we don't want to deviate from that. I mean, when you go through and you look at Christmas lights, they're primarily white with a touch of color. We don't have anybody wanting to be on the great Christmas light fight in this town.
Yeah, that was fun. But it's funny you say that, because I was talking to Michael, his son, on Friday and talked about it. And I said, what you'll probably hear is something that he used to always say. Understated elegance is something that kind of marks this town, where it's not, that gaudy, in your face type of something, but it's very nice. It's that understated elegance that kind of reminds you of Highland Beach. And I'll kind of use that as kind of the guide and give you some options and this, but not this, just so you guys can, guide me in the right direction of what you'd want to see.
I agree with the comments. I know we have a public comment.
Yeah, I did have some comments, but your discussion actually came off closer to what I was going to say as opposed to what I thought the original intent of the resolution is, because the resolution actually says you're naming the building. And what I was going to say is that, and I knew I was going to come off as being like mean-spirited and all this, which is not my intent, because obviously I think Doug is both his stint on the Financial Advisory Board and then as mayor. He clearly worked very hard and accomplished a lot for the town. So I think honoring him is good, but in principle, I'm not really in favor of naming major programs or buildings after individual, which is, I think, was the intent of, or well, at least what the resolution originally stated was it was going to be the Hillman building, basically. And I'm kind of not in favor of that. I'm very in favor of honoring people who've been of major service to the town. I mean, the ways that I've seen that I think work best is the kind of thing you've mentioned. I mean, pretty much on every civic building, you'll see a plaque that mentions the governing body at the time. I mean, I would certainly go further than just an additional plaque with Mayor Hillman on top, but in the lobby, something that represents, you know, a bronze plaque plus a portrait or a photo portrait of good size. You know, recognizing his quote, you know, foresight and leadership in the creation of the department, or whatever language is meant to be, I think would be a great way to do this, rather than the actual naming of the whole building or of the department. And similarly, I don't think it should be viewed as a one-off. I think that as time goes on, if there's ever, you know, I don't know what the exact plans are now, but at one point there was going to be like a little veterans memorial out front on something like that. I mean, it shouldn't be the John Shoemaker Memorial, but there should be a little plaque saying that, you know, should be honored in terms of his service and his advocacy for veterans. As time goes on, the town may see fit to do something honoring Peggy Seidman for her contributions during a difficult time of governance of the community, followed by her contributions to the town as while serving in the state legislature. Or it may be something for Chief Joseph, as things go well, as the founding father of the
How about a
of the
mural?
fire department. So the point being that I think that this is an excellent way to set a precedent for people who really have gone above and beyond for the town, but I think that it needs to be kept in perspective. And my original thought when I saw the resolution, your comments have really been much along with what I'm saying. But my thoughts when I saw the original resolution was, yeah, we really want to do something to permanently honor Doug, but like naming the whole building with a big thing on the outside, you know, the Hillman building would not be the sort of thing that I think is appropriate. That's all. Thank
I
you.
don't think any of us thought we'd have a big name across the front of
Okay,
it.
that was-
That was.
It was apparently my mistaken impression from the resolution, which was, I think, had something about naming the building after him.
Yes.
Yes, yes, but not a big sign outside.
Right, right.
Do we need to reword the resolution or you
We
think we're
could,
okay? with-
I could bring it back at the 16th, tweak it a little
Okay.
bit, and then give you some more, hopefully I can get you some more options. Anybody that's got a great artistic view, you want to share anything with me, that would be great. Please don't let me pick colors or anything like that, so. We could come up with a few things. I've talked with Mr. Remus, who took a picture that I remember, Doug said is the best picture
That
anyone's
is the
ever
best picture.
taken of me, so that is the picture that we
Yes.
will.
Yeah, that's impactful.
On
Yes,
the,
that
on the
would be
mayor wall
perfect.
as well as in the, I think, because he liked it so much, that would be a perfect piece, and then a plaque, and then some type of other story or photo documentation, I think would be kind of neat to kind of, when you walk in to see that, so those in the public that are waiting to go upstairs to see one of the fire folks, there's something that's the attraction or an education piece, to kind of document our
History.
experience.
Yeah, the history of establishing our own fire
Mhm.
department.
Okay, so I'll bring that back. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, moving along to town commission comments. Commissioner Goldberg.
Well, we've had so much significant business today and lots of comments. I particularly want to say with the referendum, I think it shows by the consensus that we have. Real participation in the continued betterment. We dealt with significant money matters here. And I think that it really showed that the residents have faith in our government and our commission, and I thank them for that. I'm very proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say it was nice seeing all the new officers and I feel old. I remember the day I started and I'm looking forward and I can't wait for the 19th and the ribbon cutting and seeing everybody and then I'm just looking forward. Thank you, Chief.
I think it's a testament to that we must be doing something right, that we don't have an audience full of people screaming at us. And I
We've come a
don't
long way, huh?
believe- Oh, we have really come a long way. And yet we don't have a problem accepting people coming up with opinions that are different than ours. We don't feel like we're being attacked, but people are voicing their opinions. And in a town like this, people should be allowed to voice their opinions because we are so small. And even when we create ordinances, more often than not, they're in terms of, well, we can be a little lenient here and we can be a little lenient there, because this town is a kinder and gentler town. And it works for us. Would it work for a bigger place? I don't know, probably not. But it does here, so we should continue to foster that. I think it's a great place to live for all of those reasons.
I would also like to agree with those comments, and I'd like to add that I think in watching all of the meetings that we have really good advisory boards and that are really working hard and coming up with some really good suggestions. So I thank them as well.
Yes, absolutely. And a big thank you to St. Lucie Church and Father Horrigan for allowing us to use the parking lot. I mean, that has really helped us out tremendously and we just really appreciate it. So now it's announcements and then we get to your report. Okay, so I'll go through announcements. Well, board vacancies, Board of Adjustment and Appeals Board, we have one vacancy for an unexpired term ending on September 21st, 2024. Meetings and events, we have our meeting today that we just had, and then April 9th at 1 o'clock, we have the Code Enforcement Board regular meeting. And then April 11th at 9:30 in the morning, we have the next Planning Board regular meeting. There are no board action reports. And now to Town Attorney, anything?
No, ma'am. I'm still looking through, trying to digest all the new legislation that came out of last session. So within the next couple of weeks, I'll probably bring that back to you as summary or things that we might have to change or tweak or whatever, but that's coming. And that's it. Thank you.
Good to know. Town Manager.
No major comments, just, it's in the strategic plan. That's what we're working on. Again, the 19th, our next big target, getting a community event together. That'll be great. We'll get some good food. It's history in the making, as far as I'm concerned. We've come a long way, persevered a lot of criticisms and doubt to come out on the backside of it, a better, stronger, kinder, gentler community. That renaissance that we kicked off here 3-4 years ago has really marked, our understated elegance, the biggest small town in South Florida, 3 miles of paradise has really come together. So I thank each of you for making this possible.
Thank you, Marshall. And with that, at 3:41, we can adjourn. Thank you, everyone.